The capture, hook plus suspense. The galaxy was wide and full of voices, but one voice was always missing: humanity's. Aliens whispered about them in secret halls, in war rooms, in the dark corners of space stations. Some called humans Deathworlders. Others called them the unfinished threat. But most only spoke in fear. They said no empire was foolish enough to capture one alive. And yet, one empire tried. It began on a cold world of stone, under a sky with 3 moons. The Zoran Dominion had prepared for this moment for years. They had studied old records, traded rumors, even built a prison designed for only one type of prisoner. And on that night, after a hunt that had cost them 40 soldiers and 2 ships, they finally dragged a human into their cell. The chamber was deep underground. Walls of black metal hummed with power, chains locked to the floor. A dozen alien guards stood at every corner, weapons aimed, claws ready. They expected screams. They expected begging. But the human sat silently. He was tall, dust covering his face, a line of blood across his cheek. His wrists were bound, ankles locked in heavy cuffs. He did not fight. He did not cry. He only looked at them slowly, carefully, as if memorizing every face in the room. The alien commander stepped forward. His name was Sharath, and he had dreamed of this day. His armor shone under the red lights, and his voice echoed like thunder. "At last," Sharath said, raising his arms. "The galaxy's ghost, the last predator of Earth, and now ours." The soldiers hissed and clapped their claws together. A strange sound, part cheer, part hunger. The human did not move. Sharath circled him, sneering. "We lost brothers hunting. We lost ships tracking you. And yet, here you are, weak, small, alone." The silence grew heavy. The only sound was the hum of the walls, the drip of water from a pipe above, and the human's slow breathing. One soldier leaned forward and spat. The spit hit the human's boot. Still, he did not react. His eyes only shifted sharp, cold, cutting through the soldier like a blade. The soldier looked away, unsettled. Then the human smiled. It was not wide. It was not friendly. It was thin, quiet, a kind of smile that belonged to someone who already knew how the story ended. The guards shuffled nervously. Even Sharath felt a twitch in his throat. "What is so funny?" Sharath growled. The human finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, too calm for a prisoner. "You think this ends here?" The words echoed in the chamber, simple but heavy. The guards looked at each other. "You are in chains," Sharath snapped. "This is the end." The human tilted his head. His eyes followed the cracks in the ceiling, the guards at each post, the faint flicker in the lights. Then he looked back at Sharath and said nothing more. Only silence. That silence grew like a shadow. The guards began to whisper. One muttered that humans were not natural, that their blood carried secrets. Another whispered that humans never traveled alone, that they always carried something. None spoke loud, but all of them felt it, the air growing colder. The lights dimming for a second too long. Tap, tap, tap. A sound echoed through the walls. Soft, steady, like knuckles rapping on metal. The guards froze. What was that? One hissed. Sharath barked. Ignore it. Just the machines. But the sound came again. Tap, tap. Louder this time. Closer. The human smile widened by only an inch. The guards raised their weapons, aiming at the shadows in the corners of the cell. The hum of the walls grew louder, sharper, like a scream. Trapped in the wires. "Do not be afraid," Sharath shouted. "It is only tricks." But inside, even he felt his skin crawl. The human leaned forward, chains rattling, and whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're already here." The lights flickered. The walls trembled. Somewhere above, the sky itself seemed to shake. The soldiers stepped back. The commander clenched his weapon tighter. The human lowered his head, calm, waiting. And in that moment, for the first time, the Zoran Dominion understood what it meant to capture a human. They had not caught prey. They had lit a beacon. The interrogation, the chains rattled as the human was dragged deeper into the prison. The guards moved in silence now. They no longer laughed. They no longer jeered. The tapping sound still echoed through the walls, soft, but steady, as if the metal itself remembered something the guards had forgotten. The chamber of questioning was colder than the first. Long black walls stretched like the ribs of some buried beast. In the center stood a single chair, carved from steel, with restraints thick enough to hold down a star beast. Above it, a white light buzzed, flickering, casting shadows that stretched. And bent unnaturally, the human was placed in the chair, his wrists locked, his ankles strapped, his chest pressed down with iron bands. The guards checked twice, then 3 times, to make sure he could not move. He did not resist. He only watched. Commander. Shirath entered slowly, his claws clicking against the floor. He carried no weapon now. Instead, he carried a device small, sharp, glowing faint blue. It hummed like a swarm of flies. "This is called the extractor," Shirath said, circling. "It pulls memory. It drags thought into sound. You cannot lie to it. You cannot resist it. You will give us what we want." The human tilted his head. "What do you think I know?" "Coordinates," Shirath growled, "where your kind hides, where the others sleep. You will give us your secrets." The human smiled again. The same thin, unsettling smile from before. "You don't want my memories." The guards shifted uncomfortably. The tapping sound came again, louder this time, echoing down the walls. Like knuckles striking from the other side. Tap, 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 Shirath hissed. "Ignore it. Begin the extraction." A guard pressed a panel. The extractor's glow sharpened, projecting thin blue lines across the human's face. They scanned his eyes, his temples, his jaw. A low hum filled the room, pressing into the ears of everyone present. At first, nothing happened. The human sat still, his breathing calm, his heart steady. Then the extractor sputtered. Sparks flashed. Images burst onto the walls, shapes, shadows, scenes. The guards gasped. They expected maps, codes, battlefields. What they saw instead were faces, hundreds of faces, human faces. Men, women, children, all staring forward with blank eyes. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. Their hands reached forward, palms pressing against the wall, as if trapped behind glass. One guard dropped his weapon, trembling. "What is this?" The human's voice cut through the room, steady and cold. "You asked for my memories." The faces on the wall shifted. Smiles stretched too wide. Eyes rolled back. One face cracked open like broken porcelain, and black liquid poured out, running down the wall in thin streaks. The extractor screeched. Lights flickered. The hum grew louder, like 1,000 whispers pressed together. Shirath snarled, forcing his fear down. "This is nothing. Illusions." The human leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed. "You wanted to know where we are." The faces on the wall turned as one. Their blank eyes focused on the guards. Their mouths opened. And this time, sound came. It was a scream. Long, unbroken, deafening. The guards clutched their ears. The lights burst, showering sparks. The chair shook. A human never flinched. When the screaming stopped, only the tapping remained. Louder now, closer. Tap, tap. One guard whispered, voice shaking. "It's coming from inside the walls." The human spoke again, his words calm but heavy. "You shouldn't have brought me here." Shirath roared and slammed the device against the panel. The faces vanished, the hum died, the lights steadied. He leaned close, his voice shaking with rage. You will answer me, or I will cut the truth from your flesh. For the first time, the human's expression changed. His eyes narrowed, cold, and sharp, and his voice dropped into a whisper. You don't understand. Understand what? Shirath snapped. The tapping stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. Every guard froze, holding their breath. Then 3 knocks, hard, heavy, from behind the steel wall. Boom, boom, boom. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The guards aimed their weapons, hands shaking. The human smiled again. Not wide, not cruel, just certain. They're not coming for me. He paused. His voice sharpened, like a blade sliding free. They're coming for you. The chamber lights went out. Complete darkness. The only thing left was the sound chains rattling, boots shuffling, claws clicking against metal. And somewhere in that darkness, a dozen soldiers realized they were no longer the ones in control. The first death, the prison chamber stayed dark, longer than it should have. The lights flickered, tried to return, but each time they buzzed weakly, and died again. The guards whispered to each other, voices shaking. Their weapons shook in their claws. No one dared to move closer to the restrained human. Only the tapping continued. Slow, patient, a sound like someone dragging their nails along the inside of a coffin. Tap, tap. Commander Shirath's voice cracked through the silence. Hold your posts. The human is still bound. But even as he said it, his own claws twitched nervously. The human sat unmoving, head lowered, as if listening. Then he lifted his chin and looked directly at the commander. His smile returned, calm, certain. You hear it, don't you? He whispered. No one answered. You think it's coming for me, the human continued. But it never comes for the prisoner first. A sudden metallic groan echoed through the chamber. Every soldier spun toward the wall. It wasn't the light or the extractor this time. It was the wall itself bending inward, as though something pushed from the other. Side. One of the younger guards panicked. His breathing grew fast, uneven. He aimed his rifle at the dark corner. Claws trembling. Stop, Shirath hissed. Do not fire until ordered. But the guard didn't stop. His fingers shook against the trigger. His eyes were too wide, his voice too small. It's inside. I know it's inside. Then silence. The tapping ended. The chamber grew impossibly still. The guard exhaled, shoulders slumping. He almost lowered his weapon. That was when something moved behind him. No one saw it clearly. A flicker, a shadow too tall, too thin, a shape that bent the light wrong. The guard screamed. His body lifted off the ground, slammed against the wall. His rifle clattered to the floor. His claws scratched at the air, his legs kicking wildly. Others raised their weapons, firing blindly into the dark. Blue bolts cracked against steel, sparks flying. But the guard didn't fall. He stayed pinned, choking, lifted by nothing anyone could see. The human watched calmly, eyes fixed, as though he'd seen this before. Don't waste your fire, he said softly. It doesn't care about your weapons. The guard let out a wet gasp. His chest caved inward with a sickening crack. One rib, then another. His helmet fell, clattering loudly. His mouth opened, but only blood bubbled out. Then, as quickly as it began, it ended. The guard dropped to the ground, lifeless. His body was twisted, broken in ways no weapon could have caused. The chamber was silent, except for the sound of dripping. Drip, drip. The red glow of his spilled blood spread across the steel floor. Every alien froze, breathing hard, weapons shaking. Forced his voice to steady. though it wavered at the edges. It's a trick, an illusion pulled from the human's mind. But the human shook his head. His smile never wavered. That wasn't me. That was them. The commander's eyes narrowed. Them? The human leaned forward against his restraints, his voice dropping low, almost a whisper. You never captured me. You invited me. And they always follow. Tap, tap, dot dot. The sound returned louder now. Not from the wall, from the ceiling above. The guards looked up, weapons raised, claws tight on their triggers. One of them whimpered. Another dropped his rifle and bolted for the door. Shiraz's rage boiled over. He slammed his claw against the control panel, forcing the lights back on. White light exploded across the chamber. There was nothing on the ceiling, nothing on the walls. Only the dead guard lying twisted on the floor, his face frozen in terror. The other soldiers looked at their commander, waiting for orders. None came. The human tilted his head, meeting Sharath's eyes. That was just the first. The commander's voice caught in his throat, but he forced the words out. Unbind him. Move him to another chamber. Now, the guards hesitated. None wanted to step near the human. None wanted to touch the chair. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came again, this time from the steel floor beneath their feet. The human lowered his voice, almost kindly, as if giving advice. You should have killed me the moment you saw me. Now it's too late. The lights flickered again. The chains rattled without being touched. And in that moment, every alien soldier in the chamber realized the same terrible truth. The human was not their prisoner. They were his. The awakening, the prison halls no longer felt alive. The hum of machines, the clicking of claws, the steady rhythm of patrols gone. Only silence stretched through the corridors, broken by that same sound. Tap, tap. It followed the guards wherever they moved. Above them, behind them, sometimes ahead, as though leading the way. Commander Sharath pushed forward with his unit, forcing them to drag the human toward a new chamber. A body of the dead guard had been left behind, too broken to carry. The soldiers' eyes were wide, their weapons tight in their hands, but none dared speak. The human's chains rattled softly as he walked. He did not resist. He did not stumble. He moved as though he knew exactly where they were taking him. Finally, they reached the central chamber of the prison, a vast hall meant for executions. Tall pillars stretched upward into darkness. A cold wind blew through cracks in the stone, carrying the smell of rust and ash. Shirath ordered the human strapped again. Stronger chains, heavier restraints. Then the commander addressed his soldiers, voice sharp but unsteady. We are the masters here, not him, not his kind. This place is ours, and it will remain so. Prepare the machine. The guards obeyed. They brought forward the execution beam, a weapon designed to strip a prisoner into atoms with a single blast. No creature had ever survived it. The human watched calmly as the weapon was armed. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire hall. You don't understand what you've done. Sharath bared his teeth. Enough of your riddles. This ends now. But before the order could be given, the chains around the human's wrists began to rattle, slowly at first, then harder, louder, until they shook so violently the soldiers stepped back in fear. The air grew heavy. The flickering lights above dimmed to a sickly red. The sound of tapping spread, echoing from every direction: walls, floor, ceiling, dozens of invisible hands striking at once. Tap, tap, tap. The human lifted his head. His eyes glowed faintly, not with fire or power, but with something deeper, older. His smile widened, though it was not cruel. It was inevitable. They're awake now. The ground shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. From the pillars came cracks, jagged lines spreading like veins. A sound rose low, inhuman, layered, as if many voices spoke at once, but in no language known to the galaxy. One of the soldiers panicked and fired. The blue bolt struck a pillar, and the stone split open. A hand reached out. It was too long, with joints bent backward, fingers tipped with sharp, bone-like claws. The skin was pale as ash, stretched tight over unnatural angles. Another. Cracks split open across the hall. Another hand emerged. Then another. The soldiers screamed, firing wildly. The chamber filled with blinding flashes and smoke, but the figures kept pulling themselves free. The first one stepped into the open. Its body was tall, thin, broken in places where bones jutted out. Its head tilted unnaturally, empty black sockets where eyes should have been. When it opened its mouth, no sound came, only the echo of that terrible tapping. Tap, tap, tap. The guards backed away, their courage breaking. Some dropped their weapons and ran, claws scraping the floor. Others fired until their weapons overheated, then screamed when the creatures reached them. One soldier was caught by the throat, lifted high, and pulled into the darkness of a cracked pillar. His scream was cut off in an instant. Another fell to his knees, begging in his own language. The creature bent low, its face inches from his, and with one sharp movement, snapped his neck. The human sat chained, watching it unfold. His voice was almost soft. You thought you captured one man. He lifted his head, eyes gleaming faintly. But humanity remembers. We are never alone. Wherever we go, they come with us. Sharath roared, raising his blade, trying to rally his soldiers. Stand your ground. They are illusions. But deep inside, even he no longer believed his words. The creatures kept coming, one after another, crawling from the walls, dragging themselves across the floor. The tapping grew deafening, as though the entire prison was alive with it. Tap, tap, tap. The commander turned back to the human, voice breaking with rage and fear. What are you? The human leaned forward, chains straining, his smile cold as steel. The beginning of your end. The lights burst. The chamber drowned in red darkness. Screams echoed. Claws clashed against steel. And in the shadows, the first war between humanity and the prison's masters had begun. The escape. The prison was no longer a fortress. It was a tomb. Screams echoed through the stone corridors, cut short one by one. The tapping filled every chamber, now louder, closer, endless. Soldiers who once stood tall as masters of the galaxy now stumbled, like prey in a maze. Tap, tap, tap. The human still sat in chains at the center of the execution hall. Shadows moved around him, tall and broken, dragging their limbs in unnatural rhythm. Their pale fingers scraped the floor, leaving long white marks that glowed faintly in the dark. Commander Sharath fought to hold ground. His blade swung in wide arcs, cutting down one of the creatures, yet as the body hit the floor, it dissolved into dust. Another rose in its place. They cannot be killed. One soldier cried, his weapon sparking uselessly in his hands. He turned to flee, only to be seized by a clawed hand from the wall. The stone itself swallowed him, leaving no trace. The chamber lights flickered, casting everything in stuttering flashes. In those moments of light, the human's chains began to glow faintly red. The metal hissed, then cracked. With one sudden movement, he stood free. Every soldier froze. Even the commander hesitated. The creatures bent low, crawling close to him, but they did not strike. They circled him like wolves awaiting a signal. The human stretched his arms, flexing as though he had carried the weight of centuries. His voice echoed calm and sharp. You brought me here in chains, but you never understood what you carried. Sharath spat, though his voice wavered. You are nothing. One man against an empire. The human's eyes locked onto him. One man is enough. The chains clattered to the floor. The tapping stopped for a heartbeat, as if the entire prison listened. Then the sound began again, faster now, echoing like a drumbeat of war. The creatures lunged not at the human, but at the guards. Panic broke. Soldiers scattered, running into the corridors. Their claws clattered against stone as they tried to escape. But the walls themselves betrayed them. Cracks opened where no cracks had been. Shadows reached out with fingers too long. Commander shouted, voice drowned in chaos. To the gates. Fall back to the ships. But the human had already begun walking. Not running, not chasing. Walking slowly through the blood-red light, his bare feet echoing on the stone. Where he passed, the creatures parted. Where he looked, they struck. A guard aimed his rifle at the human's back. The creature beside him grabbed the rifle, bent it like paper, and shoved the barrel into the guard's mouth. Silence followed his final scream. Shirath charged, rage, and fear twisting his face. He swung his blade straight at the human's head. The human raised his hand. The blade stopped, locked in midair. Not held by strength, but by something unseen, something heavier than gravity. The commander's eyes widened. His arms shook, but he could not move forward. You should not have taken me, the human whispered. Now you'll never leave this place. The blade cracked, snapped, fell to the floor in pieces. Shirath stumbled back, terror breaking through his pride. The human turned his gaze toward the great iron doors at the end of the chamber. They were 3 stories tall, sealed with heavy locks. With a flick of his hand, the locks shattered. The doors groaned open. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain. The human stepped through, and the creatures followed crawling, twisting, dragging themselves into the open world dot behind him. The prison collapsed. Pillars crumbled. Walls cracked. The ceiling gave way. The entire structure groaned like a dying beast. Shirath ran. He fled into the storm, his soldiers scattering in every direction. Yet no matter where they turned, the tapping followed dot tap. Tap, tap dot. The human stopped on a ridge outside, rain dripping down his face. His eyes glowed faintly in the storm's lightning. For the first time, his voice rose loud enough to carry across the valley. You wanted to capture humanity. His hand pointed back to the prison, now nothing but fire and shadows. But humanity cannot be caged. We do not die alone. We do not suffer quietly. When you touch one of us, you awaken all of us. The tapping rolled across the land, louder. Then thunder now. From cracks in the ground, from caves, from forgotten ruins, it spread. The creatures were not limited to the prison. They had always been here, sleeping, waiting for someone to remember Dot, and now they were free. The human turned and began walking into the storm, the creatures following like an army without end. Behind him, Commander Shirath fell to his knees in the mud, staring in horror as the truth sank in. The Empire had not captured a prisoner. They had opened a door dot, and what came through would never be shut again. The last stand, the storm raged over the valley. Lightning cut across the sky, each flash showing something worse. The prison was gone, reduced to rubble and smoke. But the tapping did not stop. It spread, echoing through the mountains, bouncing. Through the rain, dot tap, tap, tap dot. Commander Shirath and the few soldiers who escaped stumbled through mud and broken stone. Their armor was cracked, their weapons sparking. They were trained killers, veterans of war across 100 worlds. Yet now they looked like children lost in the dark. Form the line. Shirath shouted, voice raw. He is only one, only one. But even as he spoke, they saw him. The human stood on the ridge, black against the lightning. His eyes faintly glowed, and behind him, The creatures' tall, twisted forms marched in silence. Their limbs bent wrong, their hair clung wet against their faces. They moved with a broken rhythm, as though pulled on invisible strings. Yet their numbers grew with every flash of light. Dozens, then hundreds, then more. The soldiers raised their rifles. Hands shook. One fired a shot, the blast lighting the storm. The beam struck a creature square in the chest. It burst into dust only, to rise again, reshaped, stronger. The human spoke, his voice cutting through the storm. You wanted a war. Now you will see one. The tapping grew louder. It was no longer the sound of one doll. It was an army of them. 1,000 footsteps, small but sharp, filling the night with their rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. The soldiers broke. Some dropped weapons and fled into the storm. Others screamed, firing wildly. Each beam lit only more shadows, and each shadow struck back. Claws cut, limbs bent, faces stretched into wide, painted smiles. One soldier ran too close to the human. For a second, lightning revealed his terrified face. Then the human raised a hand. The soldier froze mid-step, his body stiff as stone. Slowly, his head turned not by his will. His mouth opened. Words poured out, words not his own. You cannot fight us, the voice hissed. It was high and broken, like glass scraping. We are already inside your memories. The soldier's eyes rolled back. His body collapsed into the mud. Wrath stumbled backward, mud splashing against his armor. His empire had burned worlds. His fleets had crushed rebellions. But this was no enemy an army could kill. He raised his blade, shouting through the storm. Face me yourself. Enough tricks. The human finally stepped forward. The creatures stopped, leaving a wide circle in the rain. Only the two remained inside. One human, one commander. The human's voice was calm, too calm. You wanted to capture me, to cut me open, to see what I am. Do you still want to know? Shirath swung with a roar. Lightning flashed, showing the blade slicing toward the human's chest, but the blade never touched. It shattered in midair, exploding into sparks. Shards fell around them like dying stars. The human moved at last one slow step. Shirath fell to his knees, clutching his chest as if crushed by a mountain. He gasped, choking, staring up at the figure in the rain. You do not understand what you awakened, the human said, bending closer. You think I am your prisoner, but I am your mirror. Everything you did to us, everything you thought you buried, we carry it, we remember. The creatures leaned closer around the circle, grinning, tilting their heads. The tapping grew louder, faster, a drumbeat of judgment. Tap, tap, tap. Shirath screamed as the mud beneath him split. Hands reached up, pale and long, pulling him down. His helmet fell off, sinking into the muck. His last breath was drowned by rain as the earth itself swallowed him whole. The storm grew quiet. Only the human stood now, surrounded by the creatures. His eyes dimmed, no longer glowing. He looked out over the valley, over the broken soldiers fleeing into the night. He spoke one final line, almost a whisper. There is no last stand. There is only the beginning. The creatures moved again, spilling out of the valley, marching into the galaxy. Their tapping became thunder, carrying the warning to every world that once thought humans could be contained. Tap, tap, tap. The reckoning. The war council of the Tsar Dominion met in silence. The room was filled with generals, ministers, and scientists. They were the rulers of 1,000 worlds, the same empire that had ordered the capture of the human. Now, they listened to reports that did not sound real, fleets erased in hours, colonies gone silent, whole cities emptied, Streets left with only tapping echoes in the dust. One admiral slammed his fist against the table. They are only dolls. Hollow things made of string and shadow. How can toys bring down armies? But even as he shouted, the others turned pale. On the screens behind him, footage played. Soldiers firing at a red figure with long, stringy white hair. Bullets tore through her body, but she did not fall. She bent and twisted, her smile wide, her hair dripping as if always wet. Behind her, more followed. Hundreds, thousands. Tap, tap, tap. The sound filled the chamber. Not from the footage. From the walls. Every minister froze. The noise was inside their own hall. A human had not stayed on the battlefield. He had spread. Through memory, through sound, through the very rhythm of fear. Across the galaxy, people began to remember things they shouldn't. A birthday where a doll was at the edge of the photo. A schoolroom where a tall, smiling girl sat in the corner. A bedtime when tapping came from the closet. Each memory opened a door. And through every door came the army. High above, the Dominion fleet formed its final defense. Thousands of warships locked into position, weapons glowing, engines burning bright. They had crushed rebellions. They had silenced empires. They had never faced this dot in the silence of space. The tapping came, not through sound, but through the vibration of their hulls. Tap, tap, tap. The human appeared at the center of their screens. No ship carried him. No beacon summoned him. He was simply there, standing against the void. His eyes glowed faintly again. His voice steady, soft. You tried to break me. You tried to own me. But you only gave me reason to remember. Now all of us remember. The fleet fired. Beams of energy lit the black. Explosions tore across the void. But when the light cleared, the human still stood. And now he was not a lone dot. From behind him stretched an endless wall of red. The dolls marched across the stars, bent limbs jerking. In unnatural rhythm, long white hair flowing in the silence. Their eyes shone white, their smiles stretched. The fleets fought. Ships fell, worlds burned. But every soldier who saw them carried the memory back home. And every memory grew into another army. The Dominion collapsed in days, not because of fire, but because of belief. Every citizen who looked into the dark at night, every child who heard a tap at their door, became part of the spread. The dolls could not be stopped because they were not only in flesh, they were inside thought. On a ruined world, deep in the ashes of the capital, the human stood alone. Around him, the dolls waited, their heads tilted, their tapping slowed, like a heartbeat. He looked at the sky, the stars burning cold. His voice was quiet, almost mournful. You thought humans were weak, that we were fragile, that you could cut one open and end a species. But you forgot something. You forgot what happens when fear is carried too far. You forgot what happens when pain learns to speak back. He raised his hand. The dolls stopped moving. The galaxy held its breath. Then he whispered, words carried. To every surviving ear, across every star still burning. Remember this. Humanity was never alone. The dolls resumed their march. The tapping spread again, across new horizons, to worlds that had never even heard the name human. Tap, tap, tap. And in every child's bedroom, on every silent night, the same terror bloomed. A shadow by the door, a figure with long hair and too wide smile. A sound against the floor, patient and sharp. The age of empires was over. The age of memory had begun.